Hello, everybody, and welcome to Town Hall Art Center's virtual volunteer orientation. On behalf of everybody here at the Town Hall team, let me be the first to welcome you. We're excited to have you. My name is Savannah Reeves. I'm the Patron Experience Manager here, and my role is to help make sure that all of our front of house staff are trained up and doing the best that they can to support our patrons when they are here for their performances throughout the season. So my team involves not only our amazing volunteer base, which you are about to be a part of, but it also involves all of our patron experience associates who fill the role of our house managers, our box office, as well as our bartenders for any performance. We're excited to have you here today for this training. It is going to be about an hour, probably less since we are virtual. There are going to be a couple of action items that are going to need to be completed and sent to me, Savannah, at my email, which is SREE, V as in Victor, ES at townhallartscenter.org. It's the same email that you received this from. You can just respond right to it. That's just how we verify that you did, in fact, watch this orientation. Once I get those answers to those questions, I will then follow up and I'll send you a link to be able to register for any of our performance supporting shifts. So just keep that in mind while you do watch this. Do pay attention because there will be some things that we'll ask you to do at the end. So that's a little bit about me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our orientation page, and we'll just go ahead and get started here. So like I said, my name is Savannah Reeves. I'm the Patron Experience Manager here at Town Hall Art Center, and I'm your direct contact here at Town Hall for when you're volunteering. We're going to talk about a little bit later who you need to contact the day of or if certain things come up. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything that you feel like needs to be addressed at your time here, please go ahead and send me an email or give me a telephone call, and I'll make sure to get that squared away as soon as possible. For those of you who are new to Town Hall, we'll just take a minute here to go over our mission and our vision. The Town Hall Art Center's mission is to enrich the cultural, social, and educational life of the community through professionally produced live theater, concerts, and other cultural events, as well as providing year-round educational programs for both children and adults. That's our big overarch mission, right? That's the big goal that we want to accomplish. Our vision is our more focused part of that goal. Our vision is to be the premier provider of cultural arts experiences in the South Metro Denver area. We know that we're not the Denver Center for Performing Arts. We know that we're not the Arvada Center. We're also not trying to be. We're very proud of the fact that we are your local neighborhood theater that's right there on Main Street and has been for the past 40 seasons. So that's really where we strive to find our niche, and that's where we have found our niche in the last 40 years is we're that Main Street theater that you always know is there. You don't have to feel like you have to be stuffed up in order to come and enjoy a show. You can show up in jeans and a t-shirt and still embrace arts and culture in the way that you want to embrace it. I mentioned earlier that I'm the Patron Experience Manager who helps to oversee the Patron Experience team. We do have a philosophy that helps guide us not only as a Patron Experience team, but also for our volunteers. Town Hall Art Center strives to treat our patrons as more than customers by creating, maintaining, and enhancing a cultural environment and physical space where they can build relationships and connect with live theater. Our patrons are our guests, whom we take great pride in hosting. You know, the patron experience philosophy really came about during our closure in 2020 for the COVID-19 pandemic. I think we all at that time realized, man, we just depended on the interaction of other people and being able to do things that filled our soul. Last season, as we came back from being closed for COVID, we really took it as a priority to welcome our patrons back home to live theater. And that's something that we want to continue this season. For us, going back to that, we're the small town Main Street theater. Part of what makes that really amazing and helpful for all of us is we can be a little bit more conversational, a little bit more friendly with some of our patrons. We don't actually need to worry about staying so buttoned up and keeping them at an arm's distance. I really encourage you while you're a volunteer here to think about building your relationships with patrons, especially if you're going to be here repeatedly. We all know from the other side that customer service is a really important part and a really important aspect of any experience that we have. So I encourage you, as you're here, if you start to recognize patrons or get to know them, please engage them in conversation. There's nothing better for a patron than when they get remembered by somebody from our team in between shows. They really do start to become your friends. There's some patrons that I look forward to seeing every single showtime, and there's other patrons that when you follow up with them to say, hey, last time I saw you, your grand kiddo was headed to his Little League World Series. How did that go? What did he do? How did they accomplish that? Being able to take those small moments to really create a true experience that not only our patrons would appreciate, but an experience that you yourself would appreciate if you were here too. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of people who help make Town Hall Town Hall. There's not going to be a pop quiz later, but do just know that you will see these people around. They do come to shows. They'll be a part of some events that you might be working. Sometimes we all forget as staff and board members to introduce ourselves to volunteers and let them know who we are. So this is my attempt to just kind of let you see some familiar faces. Again, there's not going to be a pop quiz later, so you don't need to worry about memorizing them, but it is helpful to just know who a few of them are. First, we have Sam Karras, who is our current board president. Our board president serves a term of 2 years, and then they become the immediate past president, where they still continue to stay on the board for another 2 years. We have Lori, our vice president, Lynn, our treasurer, Lisa McKeegan as a board member at large, as well as Deb Kelly, Jackie Lowe, Haley Teal, Christine Tatum, Dr. Danielle Staples, Alan Jimenez, and Denise Cato. JD McCrum is our immediate past president, so he does still sit on the board and he still does have a board vote and a board voice. Our staff members, we are a small but mighty team that puts together everything that you see on our stage. Starting with Robert Michael Sanders, who is our Chief Operating Officer. He's the big kahuna. You will more than likely see him just kind of popping up, running around, trying to help on the night of a show. He is always able and willing to help you. So if you ever need anything and you see that face, he's a great one to ask. Next, we have Matthew Kepler, who is our Programming Director. Matthew's been involved with Town Hall for just about 10 years, so he knows a lot about what's happening here. So same thing, you might see him on a couple of show nights. He typically kind of just watches the shows and stays in the theater, but you might see him milling around. If you ever need anything, please always ask. Sarah Alexander Winiger is our operations manager. You sometimes will see her at a show, but you will mostly just see her during the day. We then have Mike Haas, who is our technical director, myself, the patron experience manager, and then Luann, our education manager. Under Mike Haas, our tech director, we have Kevin Chung, who is our master carpenter, as well as Dustin Hartley, who is our painter, as well as our videographer. So all of those sets that you see built on stage, they come from those three guys for the most part. Stephanie O'Malley heads up our development department in helping us to receive funding. Stephen Burge is our marketing manager. And then you have a couple of our patron experience associates. These are the faces that you're going to see more often than not. We have Kendra, Ashley, Hannah, Jacob. We've also added a few other faces to our group who you'll meet as you come in. These are the folks who you're going to be working with day in and day out when you're here for a performance. They'll either be your house manager or they'll be your box office representative. Now that we've seen who helps to make this thing run, what exactly are we helping to run? So the way that Town Hall breaks down their season is our season typically runs from September through June. And we produce 5 to 6 what we call main stage shows per season. Here are just a few photos of some of our main stage shows we had last season. In that top left-hand corner, you have a still from Wedding Singer. Moving to the right, you have a still from The Fantastics. And then finally, in that bottom left-hand corner, you have a still from our Once on This Island. In addition to our main stage shows, we are also proud to offer a Spotlight series. This is in partnership with Arapahoe Community College. Town Hall Art Center presents a new adult education program with a presentation and discussion of topics related to our main stage productions. We've tied this in with our cast, crew, and performer talkback sessions as well. So it's a really unique opportunity after a Sunday matinee to still be able to sit in the theater and get a little bit more insight into not only the show, but how the performers prepared themselves to go into it. We use that ACC professor as kind of our facilitator of discussion, who will sometimes bring other perspectives or other things that maybe we didn't realize with that show. It's free to all of our audiences, and it's something that we really, it's a program that we're really excited about and that we're noticing that our patrons love more and more. Last but not least, we have our town hall special programming, which is new this season. This is some of our limited engagements where we have one or two weekends where we show the show. So this season we have three limited engagement special programming. Our first was Putting It Together, which happened the last weekend of October. Coming in the middle of January, we've got Masterclass for 2 weekends, and then we're wrapping up January with In the Trenches for 2 weekends. In the Trenches, we're really excited about. That's a locally written and produced show that are proud to premiere on our town hall stage. Speaking of our town hall stage, we are in the midst of our 40th season. We kicked it right off with Xanadu. We'll be rolling into Newsies next, which takes us through November and December. In February, we'll move into I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, which is a commentary on dating, married, and what does life look like after you get there. In April, we'll be doing La Cage aux Folles, which is the stage version of The Birdcage, which is a movie you may or may not be familiar with, featuring Nathan Lane and Robin Williams. And last but not least, we will be closing out our 40th season in June with Memphis, which talks about the rise of modern rock and roll music in that area. All right. So now to just get into the nuts and bolts just a little bit more on what exactly it means to be a volunteer and what you should expect while you're here. First things first, we use Sign Up Genius as our main way to register for shifts and unregister for shifts, as well as for communication between myself and volunteers. You're probably familiar with Sign Up Genius already, as that's how you got to this volunteer orientation page. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to close out of this real quick so we can look at it. When you first started, you should have started with this little tab over here for our town hall volunteer training sessions. And then what I try to do is I will put tabs up on that same sign up based off of the time of season that we are. So coming up next for us, we're going to have our late fall, early winter opportunities. When you click on that tab, you'll be able to scroll down and you'll be able to see all of the opportunities that are still available. Now, this is a good opportunity to kind of explain what some of the things are that you're going to see on that Sign Up Genius. For every show, you're going to see that we have THAC performance support. That's just going to be our general usher, maybe assisting with the elevator, and also being a greeter before the house opens. This on-call session right here is for folks who live within 20 minutes or so of town hall and who are able to be here within 20 minutes. This on-call person is in case any of these other volunteers who are registered didn't show up or had to cancel last minute. That's a way that we're able to build in a safety net so that way we still have the appropriate amount of people for every show. Speaking of the appropriate amount of people for every show, we do typically try to schedule 4 ushers per performance. However, there are certain shows and certain dates where we are seeing really high house numbers. So in that case, you might see that number bumped up to 5. You'll also see that sometimes we'll add additional items in here like bar support. This isn't to be our bartender, but this is to help our bar fill drinks before Act 1 and intermission when we do have those big houses. Our intermission times are typically only 15 minutes, so if we have a sold out house of 200 people and 100 of them decide to come down, we just need some extra hands to help us make sure that we can get through that. When you arrive for your scheduled shift, actually before I go there, Sign Up Genius. So when you register, you will receive a confirmation email that comes from Sign Up Genius, just confirming your shift. And then a few days before the shift that you're scheduled for, you will also receive another reminder for that shift that's coming up. I do recommend, since Sign Up Genius is a different website that we use, it is not a website that I have control over. Please add, once you register for your first shift and they send you an email, please add that email to your address book so that way you're making sure that you're getting all of our communications. Like I said, typically all of our mass communications for volunteers is going to come through Sign Up Genius. Now that includes whether or not there was a cancellation, whether your shift had been canceled, anything like that. I also always recommend that once you receive that confirmation email or as you're a few days or so away from your shift, to just make sure that you're checking that Sign Up Genius regularly to make sure that things haven't changed and that you didn't miss a communication from us. So that's how you register for a shift and that's how you get here. The next step is once you arrive, what are you supposed to do? So we ask that most of our volunteers arrive about 15 minutes before we open our doors to the public. We open our doors to the public 1 hour before curtain. So for example, if we have a show that starts at 7:30 p.m., we would open our lobby doors at 6:30 p.m. We ask that all volunteers arrive no later than 6:15. Um, our house managers will be here as early as 5:30. So if you ever had an opportunity or if you ever had a concern that you wanted to make sure that you had enough time to prepare yourself for what was coming, we always encourage you to come earlier and ask for a little refresher training or a refresher from any of our house managers or box office. But we do ask that at bare minimum that you show up at least 15 minutes before we open those doors. That 15-minute time period is important because that's where you will meet with not only your other volunteers, but you'll also meet with your house manager to get all of the details as well as your assignment for the evening. Your assignment is not only the job that we're going to ask you to do while you're here, but also your seating assignments and any other information that is going to be important for you to know. This meeting should be attended each and every time that you come. So when you arrive for your scheduled shift, please make sure that you check in with your house manager. This is twofold. It's A, so that way we can record your volunteer hours appropriately, so that way we can appreciate you at the appropriate level at the end of the season, but also for safety. Just in case we ever had an emergency where we needed to evacuate, we need to know exactly how many volunteers and how many people we had in the building before we do that. We do ask that our patron experience volunteers volunteer at least 2 times per show, or at least 12 times within a season. For Town Hall to be successful, we encourage you to volunteer on a regular or repeating shift schedule. This again helps you to build that relationship not only with other volunteers, but with our patrons. In terms of a dress code, we do ask that all volunteers do abide by this. We ask that you wear black bottoms, white tops, and comfortable dark or black shoes. You will be standing for an hour prior to being able to sit down to watch the show. So just make sure that whatever shoe choice you pick, that you will be comfortable with it. Sometimes the theater does get chilly, so we do ask that, or we don't ask, but please feel free to bring a sweatshirt or a sweater to wear with you while you're in there. The one thing that we ask is if you are going to bring a sweater or a sweatshirt, please let it fall in line with that dress code as well. If you're going to wear a white sweater or a black sweatshirt because you're going to be cold, that's absolutely fine. What we ask is that you make sure that that logo just stays nice and small. So instead of showing up with the hoodie, the black hoodie that has the Nike logo that goes all the way across from it, go for the one that has the small logo in the corner. When you arrive at the theater to go with your dress code, we also have vests, and our house manager will be able to point that out to you. We do encourage you to wear the vest because it just helps to streamline that look, so that way our patrons are able to easily identify who they need to speak to and when. The other thing that you'll get when you arrive is going to be a lanyard. Yours will say volunteer and it will have the show that we're working. We ask that you wear those so that way everybody who's a part of the production knows how you are a part of the production, right? And this is going to come in handy actually when we get into our little shift snapshot. All right, just to go over conduct and behavior real quickly. Um, the one thing to remember as a Town Hall Art Center volunteer, especially when supporting performances, is you are the face of Town Hall to our patrons while you're here. So we do ask that you smile and maintain a positive attitude. You're essential to our patron experience team. We also understand that, sometimes you just wake up and you're just not in the best mood. Please, if you hadn't canceled your shift, please just mention that to our house manager, right? We always want to be able to lean into where you are feeling comfortable and what you can do. And if you're just having a day where you don't really feel like you want to talk to people, we can absolutely find a better opportunity that fits where you are. So please just always allow us to meet you where you are in any of those instances. While you're here, we do ask that you speak highly of town hall programming. Patrons have been here for a really long time. Some of our patrons have been here with us since the very beginning. So we love that they feel that they have so much ownership within town hall. Sometimes they forget though, that there are certain things that we need to do. So If a patron is giving you feedback, we always ask that you just thank them for their feedback and refrain from offering your own, whether you agree with our programming choices or not. While you're here, we just ask that you do maintain that level of professionalism. On that same note, I do always like to point out that while you are here as a volunteer, we want you to be having fun. So if at any point you feel like you have a patron who um, needs additional support or additional help, please always reach out to the house manager and or box office. That's what they're here for. That's what our paid staff is here for. So if you are in a situation where you're not feeling comfortable, a volunteer will always have a radio. Not every volunteer, but there will always be a voice of the volunteers. Anytime you need a house manager, stage manager, or box office, you can hop on that radio and just tell them that you need some support upstairs, and a staff member will be right up there. We never want you guys to feel like you have to be the ones who are defending town hall to the death. Let our staff step in and take care of that if they need to. We do ask that you plan to stay for the entire performance. If you're unable to stay for the entire performance, we just ask that you notify your house manager when you arrive that you need to be early or that you need to leave early. Just as an aside, this information should always be communicated to town hall ahead of time. There's a lot of times where we can adjust and flex to those, but there are some times where if we don't know about it, we might not be able to lean into that. So that's something that when you're signing up in Sign Up Genius, there's a section for notes. You can put that comment in the note section. That helps us figure out where we should put you for the evening to be the most helpful and being able to support the performance accordingly. We do ask that all volunteers purchase all concession items. We are happy to give you a complimentary drink to start your evening, whether that's soda, water, tea, coffee, anything like that. Our bartenders are happy to get you squared away with that, either at the beginning of the evening or intermission. If you wanted to have a candy bar or something like that, you are more than welcome to. We do just ask that you pay for that concession item and not put our bartender in the awkward position of having to remind you of that. As we talked about earlier, please confirm your arrival time and sign up Genius. They are different for the most part. We have our shows that start at either 2 p.m., 6:30 p.m., or 7:30 p.m. But every now and then there are extenuating circumstances that force us to have to change our timing. For instance, this season we had a 2 p.m. matinee scheduled on Super Bowl Sunday, and that was going to overlap way too much, so we had to push it back. So please just always confirm your arrival time and sign up Genius. Follow the appropriate steps listed in Sign Up Genius and the manual if you're running late or need to cancel the shift. What those steps are is to please send an email to both myself as well as the box office. I do not work every single day. So if it is a Saturday, Sunday, or it's past the time that I've already left for the evening, if you send me an email saying that you won't be able to get here, the people who are working won't receive it. So always just send that email to myself as well as the box office. That just helps to let us know that either A, you're running late or you're not able to make it. We do ask that you please confirm your seating arrangements when you arrive. That's something that the house manager will go over you with. Volunteers are more than welcome and in fact encouraged to watch the events that they volunteer for, but we do ask that you stay in the reserved seats for safety reasons. We do strategically need to place our volunteers in certain sections and in certain areas so that way in the case of an emergency, they're able to effectively help. One last thing we always like to point out is that house managers are responsible for all volunteer operations during your scheduled shift. House management will assign volunteer tasks based on rotation as well as staffing needs. When those house managers are having their meeting with you, it is possible that they may ask, what is it that you would like to do tonight? Please be honest with them. If you really truly don't care about what position you're filling, that's great. But if you're like, man, I hate running the elevator, I do not want to do that, please let our house manager know. If you don't feel comfortable being on the radio, please let our house manager know. Again, we want you all to be able to have fun while you're here too. We don't want to put you in a position where you feel like it's not fun. Okay. One more for conduct and behavior, drug and alcohol use. The consumption of alcohol or drugs before or during your shift is strictly prohibited. If you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol while volunteering, you will be asked to leave by the house manager and removed from the volunteer program immediately. Please be mindful of this if you decide to enjoy dinner on Main Street prior to arriving for your volunteer shift. No exceptions. There are no exceptions, but there are some clarifications, okay? We're all adults. If you would like to have a glass of wine before dinner or with dinner before coming here, That's totally fine. Just stay away from drinking the bottle of wine before you get here. And any prescription drugs that you need to take, please take them. If you have life-saving prescriptions drugs that you need to take, we want you to take that. What we would want to know is if you're taking a drug that maybe, or a prescription drug that maybe would inhibit your ability to react in an emergency situation. Our volunteers will never initiate having to evacuate or do anything like that. However, you are an integral part in making sure that that is successful. So all of this is to say we need you to be of sound mind while you are here. Okay. So we won't be taking a field trip to the theater because we're virtual, but we are just going to talk about a few more things. The first thing that we're going to talk about is who's the boss. So when you're upstairs in the theater, the stage manager is going to be the boss. Anything that they say goes. And that is from if there's a patron who's disrupting the show, they might call an intermission. If there is an emergency response that needs to happen, you might hear the stage manager get up and say, we need to evacuate the theater. I need a volunteer at section 4. I need a volunteer at section 1. I need 2 volunteers here. If a stage manager asks you to do something like that, we do ask that you comply. A stage manager will never ask you to do something that is outside your realm or responsibility. If that ever happens, please send me an email so that way I can look into it and address it. On the vice versa of that, anything that's not happening in the theater, the house manager is going to be the boss. So same thing, those house managers may ask you to do certain things for certain reasons. There will never be anything that's unreasonable. They will never tell you to go up into the theater with a toothbrush and a toothpick and deep clean, detail clean those seats, but they might ask you to grab a vacuum at the end of the show and just walk through the rows. We do ask again that you do honor any request that they have because it is for a reason. If you ever feel like a request was made for you that was unreasonable, please reach out to me as soon as possible. Next, we're going to talk about shift snapshot, what it looks like when you actually get here for a little bit, and then we will go over our emergency procedures. Okay. So emergency procedures, for those of you who haven't been to the theater and for those of you who have, this is kind of going to be a little bit of an exercise of the mind. So here you can see our seating chart for the theater. This section right here, this hallway right here, when you walk up, this is where our patrons are going to enter the theater from the lobby every time. There are stairs that come up here, and this is where they will come in. We will have all of our volunteers kind of set up in this area, which is actually our stage. Over on this side in section 4, this is actually going to take you backstage to the elevator. So any patrons who have ambulatory needs, who are unable to climb stairs and need an elevator, you'll see them come through this way. Now, in the case of an emergency, you have 3 options effectively to get out of the theater. The first is down those front patron stairs like we discussed, and the second is going backstage and following the emergency procedure plans laid out there. On your first shift, you will be going on a tour with your house manager of these places. Please just confirm with them what exactly the emergency procedure is for when you're back there. Last but not least, the third emergency exit in the theater is if you go straight up the middle stairs, you go down the side stairs, out the door to an exterior set of emergency stairs. Like we talked about, patrons do not have to stay with THAC if we need to evacuate. Once we get those patrons evacuated, they are more than welcome to leave. We do ask that THAC staff and volunteers always meet at the corner of Prince and Main Street, which is Ranky Brothers with the Jackass Hill Brewery, just to check in with our house manager, just to make sure that we did get everyone out, so that way when South Metro arrives or whomever, we're able to communicate appropriately. After we've recorded that you were there and you've made it out safe, you are also free to go for the evening. Emergency procedures, again, if something needs to happen, the stage manager in the theater will communicate that very clearly to you. They will say, I need volunteers to help evacuate patrons down the front patron stairs to the lobby, or I need patrons to help evacuate, or I need volunteers to help evacuate patrons through the backstage stairs. They will have already been in communication with our house manager to figure out where the issue is and figure out what we need to do. Now, one thing I do always like to talk about here, just as a pause. Again, for those who are unfamiliar, our theater is actually located on the second level of our building. So, in the case of an emergency, let's say a fire, you should never be using the elevator. Now, sometimes we have patrons who are in wheelchairs. There is no other option for them to get downstairs if not using the elevator. What we've been instructed to do by South Metro Fire is if you needed to evacuate the theater and you have patrons who are in a wheelchair who are unable to evacuate. So this would be, for instance, if the stage manager said, we need to evacuate all patrons down the patron stairs through the lobby. We can't do that with a wheelchair. So what we would do at that point is we would figure out where the fire is in the building. As instructed by South Metro Fire, we would then take any persons who are unable to navigate the stairs to exit, and we will put them at the farthest opposite end of where that fire is. So if we had a fire that was happening in the back of the building backstage, which is why we would be asking people to exit from the front, we would want to put that person as close as we can towards that door. Now, the reason that's important is because the first thing that South Metro is going to ask when they arrive, because they know the setup of our building is, are there any patrons who are still inside? Their very first thing is that they are going to go in and grab those folks. So being able to just know that that is the answer to that. Again, that is something that our house managers will be taking care of in one of those emergency situations, but it is also helpful for you to know. One last thing for you to know about safety when it comes to inside of the theater, because it is a theater and we don't want to cause panic because we're in a closed room with only few exits, right? You're never supposed to shout fire in a theater. There are no audible fire alarms in there. The only way that you will know that an alarm is going off is above all of our emergency exit signs, those green signs that say exit above every door. There's two spotlights on them. When those spotlights come on, that's how you know that an alarm has been tripped. Okay, so a shift snapshot. Like we talked about, we ask that you arrive about 15 minutes before our doors open, so that way you can have a quick meeting with our house manager as well as your other volunteers and get the lay of the land. Our house opens 30 minutes before the curtain. So for that first 30 minutes that our building is open, every volunteer is going to be down in the lobby. During that time, we encourage you to be a greeter, to hand out programs, to engage with our patrons and help direct them in the right spot. While you are here, and you're representing town hall, it is very important that we ask that you're not sitting on the stairs, that you're not sitting on the chairs just chatting with other volunteers. We ask that you be actively involved in some way. If you have something that prevents you from being able to stand, that you do need to take a seat, again, please let us know. But just think about, right, when you're in those positions, what it would look like from your end. How would you feel if you walked in and you just saw everybody sitting around, right, going, hey, hi, welcome, grab a magazine, we'll talk to you later. If you really want people to feel that connection and for you to feel that connection, you want to we want to make sure that we're letting people know that we are excited for them to be here. Um, Once the house is opened, the house manager will send all of our ushers upstairs to kind of assign your positions and let you know. We typically put one usher in front of each section, so that way as team members come up, they can just roll right through, and grabbing one usher doesn't necessarily need to stay in that solid position in front. We just ask that as people come up, you just rotate going up next to them. So let's say I'm kind of the first usher. When I see a group come up and I'm helping them try and find their seats, what I'm doing is I'm looking at their ticket. I'm seeing what section are they in, what row are they in, and what seat number are they in. I'm then going to walk them over to that section, let them know that you can just climb up to that third row and your seats are 4 seats in. We do not need to walk people to their specific seat every time. We just kind of want to get them in the general area. Now, I always like to start when patrons arrive of asking them, do you know where you're headed for your seats tonight? A lot of them have been season patron and season ticket holders with us for a very long time. They've been sitting in those same seats for decades, so they know exactly where they're going. Some people don't. Some people will come up to you and they'll say, oh yeah, I'm in seat C3. Well, in our theater, we have 4 sections, which means I have 4 C3s. So in that moment, you can ask to see their ticket or ask to see if they have a seating cheat sheet. If they don't have either of those things, that's where the radio also comes in handy. You can go find the volunteer who has the radio, call for the box office, and you can get a clarification on what that seating assignment was for them. We do provide for each usher shift a clipboard. That's kind of your resource clipboard. It has a map of the entire seating chart on it for quick reference or for you to use to point out to people. We have a kind of lookbook chart of all of the crew that are involved with the show. So that way, even though they're not performers, you can still see who else is involved. A review of our emergency procedures, and then just any other helpful information that's going to be helpful for you that evening. So as we're, just grabbing one patron after another to help get them seated and help keep that line moving, then the house manager will work with the stage manager on figuring out when it's time to start the show. The house manager will either give the volunteer who's on the radio the all good to go ahead and find your seats, or they'll come up themselves and go ahead and ask you to take a seat. During the performance, we ask that ushers be observing the audience and theater. Um, yes, we want you to enjoy the show, but also we have you there because you're our eyes and ears, right? What you should be paying attention to when you're scanning the theater is any guests who have stood up from their seat and appear to be leaving. Ushers should always position themselves towards the exit the patron appears to be heading without crossing in front of the stage. So if you're the volunteer who's sitting in section 4 and you see somebody getting up and heading over towards section 4, we ask that you get up so that way you can take them backstage and down to the elevator. Same thing if you see somebody getting up and heading towards those main patron stairs, we ask that without disrupting the show, you as well get up to meet them at that door to open it to escort them down here. We ask that you let the patron know that they will not be able to return to their seats during this act. They will have to watch the rest of the performance downstairs in the gallery. We also ask that you pay attention for any guests who are having a medical emergency, radioing the house manager if necessary, or any other emergency taking place in the theater, including but not limited to responding appropriately when fire alarm lights come on. This is just something where it's a quick swivel of the head scan every now and then. By having multiple of you in there, that's also multiple perspectives. At intermission and post-performance, as well as when the show first starts before Act 1. We do ask that a volunteer make sure that the hall lights are off before the show starts and then back on during intermission. Also ensuring that the theater entrance doors open during intermission and close post-intermission. To assist patrons exiting the theater during a performance, to help line up patrons in front of section 4 during intermission and post-show to use the elevator and then operate the elevator as needed. Our patrons are not able to use the elevator on their own. They must have either a town hall staff member or a volunteer with them. At the end of the show, we ask that you walk through each section and row, collecting trash and disinfecting high touch areas. Don't so much worry about the disinfecting of the high touch areas anymore. It's really just about collecting trash. Our house managers will set you up with trash bags and gloves and all the stuff you need. And it's just a quick walk through, grabbing anything that any of our patrons didn't hit on their way out. Before you leave for the day, we do just ask that you check in with the house manager for any additional tasks for the evening. And then once the house manager clears you, you're more than welcome to head home. All right. So that is kind of the long and short of what it is that you would be doing while you are here. That is, of course, not everything. There are other things that are going to be part of this. There are questions that are going to come up. And a lot of it is really just stuff that you're going to experience and learn while you're here. Attached to this email, or excuse me, once you complete the action items needed for this training, I will send you an email with a couple of tips, tricks, and suggestions on ideal times to sign up for your first volunteer shift, as well as people who are great to work with. Some of our volunteers have been volunteering with us from the very beginning, so they have great insight and they're always eager to help you, as well as our house managers and our box office. Like I said, we want you to have fun while you're here. We don't want you to be stressed out about anything, so let us help you have fun. I did say that there were going to be some action item questions to send to me to just verify that you watched this. So the first question that I'll need you to send me an answer to is typically what time are volunteers asked to arrive at town hall for their shift? The second is who is the boss in the theater and who is the boss in the lobby? Third is, what is the program or website that we use to schedule shifts as well as communicate with volunteers? If you just want to pop those 3 answers in a quick email to me, Savannah Reeves, SREE, V as in Victor, ES at townhallartscenter.org, we'll go ahead and be able to get to the next steps and get you registered. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, please also reach out to me and I would love to get them squared away. If you have, I just said that if you had any other questions. With all of that being said, thank you so much for your interest in joining Town Hall Art Center as a volunteer. We cannot wait to see you for a show.